The junkyard moon had no real name. People just called it Kestrel 7, a dead rock floating at the edge of known space where ships came to die. Mountains of broken metal stretched across the gray surface. Old cruisers, cargo haulers, and war machines from a dozen different species lay twisted and forgotten under a sky full of distant stars. Danny Cole had lived here for 3 years. He was a mechanic, one of the best in this sector, but nobody came looking for him anymore. That was the way he wanted it. He had a small habitat station built from salvaged parts, a workshop full of tools, and enough silence to drown in. The loneliness hurt sometimes, but Danny had learned to live with pain. He was 34 years old with rough hands and tired eyes. His brown hair was always messy, and his clothes were permanently stained with grease and coolant. He talked to himself while he worked because there was nobody else to talk to. Some traders stopped by every few months to buy parts, but they never stayed long. Kestrel 7 was not a place for living. It was a place for hiding. On the day everything changed, Danny was cutting into an old cruiser. The ship had crashed here years ago, and he had been picking it apart slowly, selling what he could. He was deep inside the cargo hold when he heard something that made him stop. A sound weak and low, almost like a growl. Danny turned off his cutting torch and listened. The sound came again from somewhere deeper in the ship. He should have ignored it. Strange noises were common in the junkyard. Metal shifted. Old systems sparked back to life sometimes. But this sound was different. It was alive. He followed it through the dark corridors until he reached a sealed cargo container. The container was large, big enough to hold a small vehicle. Warning symbols covered every side of it. Biohazard, dangerous, do not open. The warnings were written in 6 different alien languages, and Danny could read most of them. He stood there for a long moment. His brain told him to walk away. Nothing good waited inside that container. But the sound came again, weaker this time, and something in Danny's chest pulled tight. It was the sound of something dying. He fired up his torch and began cutting. The metal fell away and a terrible smell hit him. Blood and sickness and something else, something animal. Danny covered his nose and stepped inside, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. What he saw made him freeze. The creature was huge. Even lying on its side, it was taller than Danny. It looked like a wolf, but wrong in every way that mattered. Its body was covered in dark fur that shimmered like metal in his light. Its legs were long and powerful, ending in claws that could tear through steel. A long tail lay limp behind it, and its face, even twisted in pain, was the face of a perfect predator. Sharp teeth, a long snout, and eyes that glowed like molten gold. Danny knew what he was looking at. Everyone in the galaxy knew. What? His blood went cold. There were legends, nightmares told to scare children. They were the greatest hunters the universe had ever produced. Fast, strong, impossible to kill. The Galactic Council had declared them too dangerous to exist, and a war had been fought to wipe them out. Every last one of them had been hunted down and killed. Or so everyone believed. The creature was chained to the floor of the container. Heavy restraints wrapped around its legs and neck. Its fur was matted with dried blood, and Danny could see wounds covering its body. It had been starving for a long time. Its ribs showed through its skin. Someone had locked this thing away and left it to die slowly in the dark. It opened its eyes and looked at Danny. He expected rage. He expected it to roar and struggle against its chains. But the creature just stared at him with those golden eyes, and Danny saw something that broke his heart. Acceptance. The creature had given up. It was waiting for death. Danny stood there, his hands shaking. Every smart decision he had ever made told him to leave. This was even weak and dying, it could probably kill him in seconds. If anyone found out he had seen one and not reported it, the Confederation would execute him. There was no good reason to stay. But Danny thought about the past 3 years. He thought about the silence and the guilt and the way he had been hiding from the world. He thought about his crew, the friends he had lost because of his mistake. He had been waiting to die too in his own way, just more slowly. He looked at the creature. It looked back at him. "I don't know if you can understand me," Danny said. His voice sounded strange in the quiet. "But I'm not going to leave you here." He walked forward and knelt beside the. Up close, he could see how bad its condition really was. Infected wounds, dehydration. It probably had days left, maybe less. The chains were military grade, designed for something exactly this strong. Danny pulled out his cutting torch again. "This might scare you," he said softly, "but I need to get these off." The watched him as he worked. It did not move. It did not try to bite or scratch him. It just lay there, breathing slowly, as Danny cut through each chain one by one. When the last restraint fell away, Danny stepped back and waited. Nothing happened. The creature was too weak to stand. Danny let out a long breath. "Okay," he said. "Okay, I can work with this." He left the container and came back with a hover cart. It took him almost an hour to lift the onto it. The creature weighed more than it looked, and its body was burning hot with fever. Danny pushed the cart through the junkyard, past mountains of broken ships, until he reached his habitat station. He spent the rest of the night cleaning its wounds and forcing water down its throat. He gave it all the protein rations he had, knowing he would need to find more soon. He talked to it the whole time, not because he thought it could understand, but because the silence was too heavy. "I don't know why I'm doing this," Danny admitted, wrapping a bandage around its front leg. "You're probably going to wake up and eat me. That would be just my luck." They made a small sound. It might have been pain. It might have been something else. Danny sat back and looked at what he had done. He had just rescued the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. He had broken about 50 laws and probably signed his own death sentence. And somehow, for the first time in 3 years, he did not feel completely alone. "You're going to need a name," he said. "We'll figure that out tomorrow." He turned off the lights and tried to sleep, listening to the sound of the creature breathing in the dark. The first 3 days were the hardest. Danny barely slept. He watched it constantly, waiting for it to die or wake up and kill him. Neither happened. The creature slept most of the time, its massive body rising and falling with each labored breath. Sometimes it whimpered in its sleep, making sounds that Danny had never expected from something so terrifying. It sounded almost like a dog having nightmares. Danny kept working on its wounds. He was not a doctor, but he had grown up on a farming colony and knew how to treat sick animals. That was not so different, at least on the outside. Clean the wounds, apply medicine, keep it hydrated, keep it warm, hope for the best. On the 4th day, the creature opened its eyes. Danny was making coffee when he heard movement behind him. He turned and found the watching him. It was still lying down, too weak to stand, but its golden eyes were clear and focused. They tracked Danny's every move with the attention of a hunter studying prey. "Hey," Danny said carefully. He kept his voice calm and his movements slow. "Welcome back." They made a low sound in its throat. Not quite a growl, but not friendly either. Its lips pulled back slightly, showing teeth as long as Danny's fingers. "I know," Danny said. "You don't trust me, that's fair. I wouldn't trust me either." He poured the coffee and sat down at a safe distance. They kept watching. Neither of them moved for a long time. This became their routine. Danny would talk while he worked on repairs or cooked food. They would watch and listen. Sometimes it would eat the food Danny left for it. Sometimes it would just stare at him with those burning eyes, trying to understand what kind of creature would help its enemy. Danny found a damaged translator chip in the junkyard and spent 2 days fixing it. When he attached it to a collar and placed it near the creature flinched away at first. But slowly, it seemed to understand what he was trying to do. "Can you understand me now?" Danny asked. There was silence for a moment. Then a voice came through the translator, rough and broken, but clear enough to understand. "Why?" It was the first word it spoke. Just one word, but it carried the weight of everything the creature could not understand. "Why did you save me? Why are you helping me? Why haven't you killed me or sold me or turned me in? Danny thought about the question for a long time. Because leaving you there would have been wrong, he finally said, and I've done enough wrong things in my life. The studied him with those ancient eyes. Then it lay its head back down and closed its eyes. The conversation was over. As days turned into weeks, the creature grew stronger. Danny learned that her name was. She was female, though he had not been able to tell at first. She was also young by standards, only about 40 years old. Her kind lived for centuries. Did not trust Danny. She made that clear in 100 small ways. She never let him approach from behind. She never let him touch her without warning. She slept with one eye open and her claws ready. She had learned through pain and loss that trust was dangerous. But she was also curious. She asked Danny questions about his world, about humans, about why he lived alone on this dead moon. Danny answered honestly. He told her about Earth, the blue planet where his species came from. He told her about dogs and wolves, about how humans had once feared them but learned to live beside them. He told her about loyalty and friendship and pack, words that seemed to mean something to even through the broken translator. One night Danny heard ships landing outside. He looked through his window and saw 3 small vessels, old and dirty, scavengers, pirates. They came to places like Kestrel 7 looking for easy salvage and easier targets. Danny grabbed his pistol, but he knew it would not be enough. There were at least 6 of them, rough-looking aliens with weapons and bad intentions. They had seen his habitat station and decided to take what they wanted. He stepped outside to meet them. Maybe he could talk his way out of this. Maybe they would just take some parts and leave. The leader was a tall creature with gray skin and too many teeth. He pointed a rifle at Danny's chest. "Nice little setup you have here," the leader said. "We'll be taking it. You can walk away if you're smart." Danny's mind raced. He had no backup, no way to fight. He was about to die on this worthless moon and no one would ever know. Then he heard a sound behind him, a deep, rumbling growl that made the air vibrate. Stepped out of the shadows. She was not fully healed yet. Her legs shook slightly, and Danny could see pain in the way she moved. But she was still 7 feet of muscle and claws and teeth. Her metallic fur caught the starlight. Her golden eyes burned with a fire that had kept her species at the top of the food chain for millions of years. The pirates stared. Danny saw the color drain from their faces. One of them dropped his weapon and ran for his ship. The others followed seconds later, stumbling over each other in their panic. Within minutes, all 3 ships were gone, leaving nothing but dust behind. Danny stood in the silence, his heart pounding. He turned to look at. "You didn't have to do that," he said. Made a sound that might have been a laugh through the translator. It came out as a strange bark. "You are weak. You would have died." "Probably," Danny admitted. "Thank you." Looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back toward the habitat station. She paused at the door. "You gave me food when I was hungry," she said. "You healed my wounds when I was sick. You did not have to do those things either." She disappeared inside. Danny stood alone under the stars, a smile slowly spreading across his face. He followed her in and started making dinner for 2. Sat in the corner, watching him with those golden eyes. But something was different now. The tension in her body was a little less. The distrust in her gaze was a little softer. "I still don't understand you," said as Danny handed her a bowl of protein stew. "Your species is small and weak. You have no claws, no fangs, no armor. By all logic, you should have left me to die. It would have been safer." Danny shrugged. "Humans aren't very good at logic." "What are you good at?" Danny thought about it. "Stubbornness, mostly. We see something that's wrong and we try to fix it, even when it's dangerous, even when it doesn't make sense." Considered this as she ate. My people had a word for creatures like that. The closest translation would be something like heart foolish. It was not a compliment. "And what do you think?" Looked at him. For the first time, there was something almost like warmth in her golden eyes. I think maybe it should be. They finished their meal in comfortable silence. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly overhead, and somewhere in that cold and empty universe, two lonely creatures had begun to find something they thought they had lost forever. A reason to keep going. Weeks passed on Kestrel 7 and grew stronger every day. Danny watched her move through the junkyard with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. She could leap 20 feet in a single bound. She could climb the rusted hulls of dead ships like they were nothing. And when she hunted the small creatures that lived in the wreckage, she was so fast that Danny could barely see her move. She was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Danny sometimes forgot what she was. Then she would turn those golden eyes on him, or bare those massive teeth, and he would remember that he was living with the most dangerous predator in the galaxy. But danger had started to feel comfortable. They fell into a pattern. Danny worked on salvage during the day while explored the junkyard or slept in patches of weak sunlight. In the evenings, they ate together and talked. Translator worked better now that Danny had upgraded it, and she seemed almost eager to share her thoughts with someone who would listen. One night, as they sat watching the stars through the habitat window, Danny finally asked the question he had been afraid to ask. "What happened to your people?" Was quiet for a long time. Her golden eyes went distant, looking at something Danny could not see. When she finally spoke, her voice was heavy with old pain. "We were not what they said we were." She told him everything. They had been hunters, yes. They were built for it, born for it. But they were not mindless killers. They had laws and traditions older than most civilizations in the galaxy. They protected the weak. They punished the cruel. They killed only when necessary, and they respected every life they took. "We controlled a large territory," said. "Many species lived under our protection. They paid us tribute, and in return, we kept them safe from raiders and slavers and worse things. It was a good system. Fair." "What went wrong?" Claws scratched against the floor. "The Confederation feared us. They looked at our teeth and our claws and saw only monsters. They could not control us, and what they could not control, they had to destroy." The Confederation was the largest government in the known galaxy. Thousands of species united under one banner. They claimed to stand for peace and cooperation, but Danny knew the truth. The Confederation was about power. Anyone who threatened that power had to be eliminated. "They started with lies," continued. "Stories about eating children, about us attacking peaceful settlements, about secret plans to conquer the galaxy. None of it was true, but truth does not matter when fear is louder." Danny nodded slowly. Humans knew something about that. His own species had once done terrible things based on lies and fear. "They were the ones who betrayed us," said. Her voice grew cold and hard. "They were in species, weak and fragile. We had protected them for 300 years. 300 years of keeping them safe from every threat, and they repaid us with poison. They had put something in the water supply of a chemical that weakened them, made them slow and confused. When the Confederation fleet arrived, they could barely fight back." "I was young then," said. "Barely more than a pup. I watched my mother die, my father, my brothers and sisters, my entire pack burned alive or shot like animals." Her voice cracked slightly. Danny said nothing. There were no words for something like that. "I ran, I hid, I survived. For 40 years I have been running and hiding. I am the last of my kind, Danny. When I die, they die with me." The weight of those words hung in the air between them. Danny felt something twist in his chest. He understood now why she had given up in that container. She had been carrying this burden alone for so long. "I'm sorry," Danny said. It felt useless, but he meant it. Turned to look at him. "Why do you hide here, Danny Cole? You are not a criminal, you are not hunted. Why do you choose to be alone?" Danny's throat tightened. Fair was fair, she had shared her pain. He owed her the same. "I had a crew once, 5 people. We worked on a transport ship hauling cargo between stations. They were my friends, my family really. We'd been together for almost 10 years. He told her about the accident, a reactor leak on the ship. Danny had been the mechanic. It was his job to keep the systems running, but he had missed something, a small crack in a coolant line. By the time he noticed, it was too late. The reactor overheated. I got out, they didn't. Danny's voice was flat, like he had told this story to himself 1,000 times. He probably had. I killed them, maybe not on purpose, but it was my fault. I should have caught that crack. I should have saved them. Listened without interrupting. When Danny finished, she was quiet for a moment. Guilt is a heavy thing to carry, she finally said. I know this. I ask myself every day if I could have done something different, if I could have saved even one more of my people. What's the answer? There is no answer. The past is dead. We can only choose what we do with the time we have left. Danny looked at her. What do you want to do? His eyes flickered with something like hope. I do not know yet, but for the first time in 40 years, I think I want to find out. Before Danny could respond, an alarm on his console began to beep. He walked over and checked the readings. His blood went cold. A ship just entered the system, he said. Confederation military. They're scanning for life signs. Rose to her feet, her whole body tensing. They found me. Maybe not. Maybe it's just a routine patrol. But they both knew better. The Confederation had sensors that could detect her from across a solar system. They had been designed specifically for hunting's kind. Danny looked at Danny. We have 3 days before they reach us, Danny said. Maybe less. Then we have 3 days to prepare. Danny nodded slowly. I guess we do. He should have been afraid. He was harboring a fugitive. If the Confederation found her here, they would kill them both. Everything about this situation was wrong and dangerous and stupid. But when Danny looked at, he did not see a monster. He saw a survivor, a friend, the only family he had left. Okay, Danny said. Let's get to work. Next 3 days were the busiest of Danny's life. He worked from the moment he woke up until exhaustion forced him to sleep. Worked beside him, learning quickly, her sharp mind absorbing everything Danny taught her about machines and explosives and traps. You want to run, said on the second day. It was not a question. Danny paused, a bundle of wires in his hands. The thought crossed my mind. It would be the smart thing to do. Take a ship, disappear into deep space, let them have me. Yeah, it would be. Danny went back to work. I'm not doing that. Tilted her head. Why, you barely know me. I am not your responsibility. Danny thought about the question. The answer came easier than he expected. Because you didn't abandon me when those pirates showed up. Because you're the only friend I've had in 3 years. Because if I run now, I'm just going back to hiding, and I'm tired of hiding. He looked at her. Besides, nobody gets to decide who deserves to live. Not the Confederation, not anyone. His golden eyes softened. For a moment she looked almost gentle. Humans really are heart-foolish. The worst, Danny agreed. They turned the junkyard into a killing ground. Danny knew every ship and every pile of wreckage on Kestrel 7. He had spent 3 years learning this place. Now he used that knowledge to create traps, old ships rigged to explode, pressure plates hidden under the dust, false life sign generators to confuse the enemy's sensors. Taught him other things, how to move quietly, how to use shadows, how to think like a hunter instead of prey. Fear is a weapon, she told him. Your enemy expects to find a weak human and a dying. When they realize they are wrong, they will panic. Panic makes them stupid. Stupid makes them dead. Danny nodded, trying to memorize everything. He was not a soldier. He was just a mechanic, but made him believe he could be more. On the 3rd day, the Confederation ship entered orbit. They watched it descend through the thin atmosphere of Kestrel 7. It was a military patrol craft, sleek and deadly. The name printed on its side was written in the language. Danny felt tense beside him. She growled, "Of course it is." 12 soldiers emerged from the ship. They wore combat armor and carried heavy weapons. At their head was a tall figure in an officer's uniform. His body was thin and with too many limbs and compound eyes that reflected the starlight like broken mirrors. Commander Vex knew his name. He was famous among a hunter who had made his career killing the last survivors of the species his people had betrayed. He had hunted her across half the galaxy. "He's the one who put me in that container," said. "He didn't kill me because he wanted me to suffer. He wanted me to die slowly, alone in the dark." Danny felt rage boil in his chest. "Then let's make sure he regrets that." They separated, disappeared into the shadows between the wrecked ships. Danny took up a position in an old cargo hauler with a clear view of the landing site. He had a rifle and a detonator. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. Vex walked through the junkyard like he owned it. His soldiers spread out, scanning for life signs. Their equipment beeped and chirped, pointing them toward Danny's false signals. The first trap triggered without warning. A pile of metal shifted and fire erupted from the wreckage. 3 soldiers disappeared in the blast. The others scattered, shouting in confusion. Danny pressed another button. A second explosion, 2 more soldiers down. Vex screamed orders. His remaining soldiers formed a defensive circle, weapons pointed outward. They were trained and disciplined, but Danny could see the fear in their movements. This was not what they expected. Then struck. She came out of the darkness like a ghost made of steel and fury. 1 soldier died before he could scream. Another managed to fire his weapon but was already gone, melting back into the shadows. Blood sprayed across the gray dust of Kestrel 7. The soldiers panicked. They fired at every shadow, every movement. They hit nothing but each other. Danny watched through his scope, barely breathing. He had seen Hunt before, but never like this. This was what 40 years of survival had created, a perfect predator with nothing left to lose. Within minutes, only Vex and 2 soldiers remained. Danny left his hiding spot and moved through the wreckage. His heart pounded against his ribs. This was the most dangerous part. He was not fast-like. He was not strong. If something went wrong, he would die. He found the last 2 soldiers trying to reach their ship. They never saw him coming. Danny was a mechanic, not a fighter, but he knew how to use a rifle well enough. 2 shots, 2 bodies, it was over quickly. That left only Vex. Danny walked toward the clearing where the commander stood alone. Vex had drawn his sidearm, his compound eyes darting in every direction. "Human," Vex hissed when he saw Danny. "You are making a terrible mistake. Do you have any idea what that creature is, what it's capable of?" "Better than you do," Danny said. Vex raised his weapon. "Then you know I cannot let you live. You have harbored a galactic threat. You have killed Confederation soldiers. The sentence is death." Danny stopped walking. He was 10 feet from Vex, close enough to see the hatred in those insect eyes. "You talk a lot about death for someone who's about to meet it." Vex laughed, a clicking sound that made Danny's skin crawl. "You think you've won. You are one human with a rifle. I am a commander of the Confederation fleet. Even if you kill me, 100 ships will come to avenge me. Your life ends today, human. The only question is how painful I make it." He aimed his weapon at Danny's chest. And then was there. She appeared behind Vex like she had grown from the shadows themselves. Her claws wrapped around his weapon arm and squeezed. Bones cracked. The pistol fell to the ground. Vex screamed. Forced him to his knees. She stood over him, her golden eyes burning with 40 years of rage and grief. Danny saw her muscles tense. She was going to kill him. She was going to tear his head off and finally have revenge for everything that had done. But she didn't. "Look at me," commanded. Her voice was cold and hard as steel. Vex looked. He was trembling now, all his arrogance gone. Without his soldiers and his weapons, he was nothing, just a coward who murdered the defenseless and called it justice. "I could kill you," said. "I have dreamed about it for 40 years. But killing you would make me what you said I was, a monster, a beast with no honor." She pulled a small device from the wreckage. Danny recognized it as a broadcast transmitter, activated it. "Instead, everyone will see what you really are. A coward who poisons water supplies. A murderer who locks the helpless in cages. The Confederation built their lies about my people. Now I will tell the truth about yours." Vex's eyes went wide. "You can't. This will destroy me. This will destroy everything." Smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "That's the idea." She knocked him unconscious with a single blow. Danny watched his body crumple to the dust. Then he looked at. "That broadcast went out across the whole sector," he said. "Yes. The Confederation will definitely send more ships now." "Yes." Danny nodded slowly. "We should probably leave." Walked toward the patrol ship. It was damaged but functional. Danny could fix it. "Yes," she said, "we should." They left Vex lying in the dust of Kestrel 7, surrounded by the bodies of his soldiers. By the time he woke up, they would be long gone. And the whole galaxy would know what he had done. They flew for 3 days without stopping. Danny pushed the stolen ship as fast as it would go while watched the sensors for pursuit. None came. The Confederation was too busy dealing with the broadcast to worry about one ship fleeing into deep space. The broadcast had spread faster than either of them expected. Its message played on news channels across 1,000 worlds. She had told the truth about the poisoning, about the lies. She had shown recordings from Vex's own ship, evidence of the crimes he had committed in the name of the Confederation. The reaction was immediate and violent. Species that had been silent for decades suddenly began to speak. They remembered the who had protected their trading routes. They remembered the who had saved them from slavers. One by one, old allies stepped forward with their own stories, their own evidence. The Confederation's carefully constructed lies began to crumble. Danny watched the chaos from a small space station on the edge of known territory. They had traded the ship for something less recognizable and used false identities to buy supplies. Nobody looked twice at them. The galaxy had bigger things to worry about. "You broke something," Danny said as they sat in a cramped cantina, watching the news on a flickering screen. "Something the Confederation thought was unbreakable." Was quiet for a moment. "My people are still dead. Nothing I do can change that." "No," Danny agreed. "But their memory isn't a lie anymore. That has to count for something." Looked at him with those golden eyes. There was something different in them now. Something Danny had never seen before. "Hope." "When I was young," said slowly, "my mother told me that the greatest strength of our people was not our claws or our speed. It was our loyalty. We protected those who could not protect themselves. We fought for those who could not fight. That was what made us." She looked down at her massive clawed hands. "I forgot that. For 40 years I only thought about surviving, about hiding, about dying with dignity. I forgot what it meant to live. And now," his lips pulled back in that strange smile, "now I remember." A message arrived that night. It came through encrypted channels, bouncing off a dozen relay stations before reaching their small ship. Danny decoded it while watched over his shoulder. The message was from a coalition of rebel planets, worlds that had grown tired of Confederation control. They had been watching the news. They had seen broadcast, and they wanted to talk. "They want to hire us," Danny said, reading the message a second time to make sure he understood. "Protection, security, hunting down slavers and pirates. They're offering us ship, supplies, and enough credits to live comfortably for a very long time. Consider this. What do you think?" Danny laughed. "Me. I'm a junkyard mechanic. A week ago I was alone on a dead moon feeling sorry for myself. This is way above my level." That is not an answer. Danny thought about it, really thought about it. He thought about his crew, the family he had lost. He thought about the years of guilt and isolation. He thought about the moment he had cut open that container and found something he never expected. A reason to keep going. I think I'm tired of hiding, Danny said. I think I want to do something that matters, and I think there's nobody in this galaxy I'd rather do it with than you. Was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed one massive clawed hand on Danny's shoulder. The gesture was awkward, like she was learning how to do something she had forgotten long ago. Among my people, she said, there was a ceremony when two warriors chose to bind their fates together, to become pack. Danny's throat tightened. What did it involve? Blood, oaths, a hunt that lasted 3 days. Eyes glittered with amusement. But you are weak and fragile, you would probably die. Probably, Danny agreed. So instead, I will simply tell you this. His voice grew serious. You saved my life when you had no reason to. You stood beside me when anyone else would have run. You showed me that courage does not require claws or fangs. It only requires a heart willing to do what is right, even when it is dangerous. She squeezed his shoulder gently. Danny felt the strength in her grip. She could crush bone without effort, but her touch was careful, protective. You are packed now, Danny Cole, from this day until my last. I will protect you as you protected me. I will fight beside you. I will die beside you if that is our fate. This I swear on the memory of my people. Danny felt tears prick at his eyes. He blinked them away but saw she said nothing. Among the tears were not weakness. They were honest. I don't know any oaths, Danny said, but I promise the same. Whatever happens, wherever we go, we do it together. Nodded, the matter was settled. Danny looked at the message again. The coalition was waiting for an answer. He started typing. What are you telling them? Asked. That we're in, and that we need a ship with a very large cargo hold. Somebody has to have space to stretch out. Made that barking laugh sound again. It was becoming familiar, almost comforting. They left the station that night. The coalition sent coordinates to a small shipyard where their new vessel was waiting. It was an old gunship, battered and patched together from a dozen different parts. It was ugly and outdated and absolutely perfect. Danny spent 3 days getting it flight-ready while explored every corner of the ship like a wolf, learning its new territory. By the time he finished, she had claimed the largest room for herself and scratched marks into the walls with her claws. Danny decided not to argue about the security deposit. On the 4th day, they lifted off. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibility. Where do we go first? Asked. Danny pulled up the coalition's mission list. There were dozens of requests, colonies under threat, slavers who needed hunting, pirates who had grown too bold, enough work to last a lifetime. He smiled, wherever they need us. Bared her teeth in that grin. Her golden eyes shone with something Danny recognized. Joy, purpose, the feeling of finally belonging somewhere after years of being alone. Then let us hunt, she said. The gunship leaped into hyperspace. Danny Cole, the broken mechanic who had been waiting to die, the last who had forgotten how to live. They were not heroes. They were not legends. They were just two survivors who had found each other in the darkness. But together, they were something more. Together, they were pack. And the galaxy would learn to remember that word. In the old language of the pack meant family. It meant loyalty. It meant that no matter what came, no matter what enemy or obstacle or impossible odds, they would never face it alone. Danny thought about that as the stars blurred around them. He thought about his old crew, the family he had lost. He thought about the guilt he had carried for so long. It would never go away completely. Some wounds never heal, but maybe that was okay. Maybe the pain was just a reminder to hold on to what you have, to never take it for granted, to fight for it with everything you are. He looked at. She was staring out at the stars with an expression of peace that Danny had never seen on her face before. "Thank you," he said quietly. Turned to him, "For what?" "For giving me a reason to keep going." Considered this for a moment. Then she reached over and placed her hand on his shoulder again, that massive clawed hand that could tear through steel, that gentle touch that promised protection. "Thank you for showing me that I still had one," she said. They sat together in comfortable silence as the ship carried them toward their first mission. Behind them, Kestrel 7 was already fading into memory. Ahead of them was a galaxy full of people who needed help. And for the first time in a very long time, Danny Cole was not afraid. He was home,